Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Don Labonte. This begins our second hour of teaching conversation patterns. In this particular template that you see here is under I want to. In the teacher's guide you can either print it out or you can write it up on a blackboard. But the student should have this on a piece of paper so that they can refer to it, keep it in a 3-ring binder so they can refer back to it as we're going through all of our progression through the patterns. On the template here you will see this 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D going down. These are basically review questions that are reviewing the patterns. I begin with I want to, and I go all the way down to I like to. These 3A have questions which review these two patterns. 3B does these three patterns. 3C, the fourth, and so forth as we go down the line. This hour we introduce the students to conversation patterns. And we use very simple verbs during our sessions here. V here refers to a verb. The patterns change the feeling in conversation. Just listen to these 9 different patterns that we'll be learning today. I'll start with a basic sentence and then with the patterns, and just listen how the feel of the sentence changes. I study, I want to study, I plan to study, I need to study, I go to study, I know how to study, I feel like studying, I try to study, I have to study, I like to study. Study remains the same, however the feelings change depending on the pattern used. In this hour we're going to have them get accustomed to 9 patterns. It's not a lot. We don't ask them to learn any vocabulary. We're concentrating on just these 9 patterns. In the last hour we studied question-making skills with the verb. All of these patterns use the do, did, will, don't, didn't, won't question form. What I do at the beginning is I start with I want to. I ask them a variety of different questions. Do you want to study? Didn't he want to study? Will he want to study? When I ask the question, they have to respond using the same pattern and the same tense. So if I say, does he want to study? They have to say he wants to study. Doesn't he want to study? He doesn't want to study. Won't he want to study? He won't want to study. Did he want to study? He didn't want to study. So I want to see if they are able to both mimic the pattern back to me, plus get the tense correct and whether it's positive or negative. During the drills that we go through with the student, if I ask a positive question, I always want a positive answer. If I ask a negative question, I always want a negative answer. Obviously, when you're speaking with people, they're using both the positive and the negative depending on the situation. But for teaching purposes, I want to know, if I ask a positive question, if the student hears that correctly and is able to respond to me with the same positive. If I do a negative, didn't he want to go? They should be able to say, didn't he want to go? If I ask a lot of negative questions and they're only answering me with a positive, it's out of weakness, not out of a strength. If I say, will you want to study? They should respond, I will want to study. Don't you want to study? I don't want to study. Basically, you're going to be going back and forth here between the question and the sentence. The question is a harder skill than the sentence, so I reverse this later while I'm doing this and tell them I will give them the sentence and they have to give me the question form of that sentence. So I will say, I don't want to go. They have to say, don't I want to go? I want to go, do I want to go, and so forth. Basically, we're seeing how comfortable they are with making questions and answering questions. You will have to introduce your students to some irregular verbs at this point, just a few of them. Go and come here, knew, felt, and had. You'll have to introduce them to those particular forms of the past tense. I wouldn't overburden them with a lot of other irregular verbs, but because we're studying these patterns at this time, we do want them to become familiar with the past tense of these patterns. When you study this particular pattern here, obviously there are a couple variations with the verb to go. You know, I go to study, I go in to study, I go out to study, I go back to study, I go by to study. So you may want to introduce them to that little crinkle here in this particular pattern. So through the hour, what we're going to be doing is basically progressing through the patterns, building one upon the other. Much like children mimic the adults or other children speaking to them when they're learning how to speak, in the same way the student should be mimicking you with the question and answer. So if I say to a student, do you want to study, and they say, I need to study, obviously we're missing the boat here somewhere. They should respond with the same pattern in the same tense. Initially, they're going to be stumbling around a lot, making mistakes. That's to be expected. The more we progress through the 30 hours, they'll become very comfortable with this. And if you say to them, did you have to go? They'd say, I had to go. Did she feel like going? I felt like going. Does he know how to read? He knows how to read. Will they like to go? They will like to go. They'll respond with the same pattern. In conversation, most people are responding with the same pattern and feeling. If you say to a person, another native speaker, do you want to go? And they reply, I try to go. You know, there's a misconnect there. Basically, people are communicating their feelings through patterns, and the native speaker unconsciously uses these patterns and would like the same feeling back in return, either in a positive or a negative. Thank you very much.